Okay, so we're going to move on to talking about three other types of relationships or interactions that could happen between organisms. So yesterday we talked about cooperation, coexistence, competition, and predator-prey relationships. Today we're going to talk about three other ones that you may not have heard of before. So take really careful notes and do really well with the practice questions that you get to after the notes, because that'll help you understand these relationships for the quiz this week. So the relationships that we're going to talk about today are called symbiotic relationships. So symbiosis is a new word probably for you. Symbiosis is any type of close relationship between two different species of organisms living together. So it has to be two different species. So where cooperation, coexistence, competition, those could be the same species interacting. Symbiotic relationships are different species. So different organisms, different animals interacting with each other. And it has to be a type of close relationship. So they really have to be interacting with each other pretty often. So there are three main types of symbiosis or relationships between different species that we're going to look at today. There are other ones as well, but these are the main categories of symbiotic relationships. So usually a relationship between two species will fall into one of these three groups. So the first category of a symbiotic relationship, or the first type of symbiotic relationship that we're going to look at, is mutualism. Mutualism is a type of symbiotic relationship in which both species benefit. If you think of the word mutual, let's think of the word mutual friend, like a mutual friend on Facebook. It's a friend that you have in common with someone else. So both of you have that friend. So in a mutualistic or a mutualism, both species benefit from the relationship. So an example would be an oxpecker and a rhino. So an oxpecker is a type of bird. You can see them here standing on the backs of the rhinos. It's a type of bird. The oxpeckers actually stand on the rhinos' backs and they eat the insects that attach themselves to the rhinos, and they eat them for food. So these insects that attach themselves to the rhinos, they're kind of like parasites if you think back to our microorganism unit. Parasites feed off of an organism. So these insects were feeding off the blood of the rhino. So they were really hurting the rhino, and the oxpeckers eat these insects for food. So the oxpeckers get food, and then the rhinos benefit by being cleaned off from these pets. So both species are benefiting, the oxpecker and the rhino. So we call this mutualism. Instead of calling it cooperation, we call it mutualism because it's two different species interacting. And they're not really cooperating with each other, it's just they're both benefiting from what each other are doing. So it's more of a mutualistic relationship instead of cooperation. They're not working together to do something, they're just living their own lives, and as they live their lives, they're mutually benefiting from each other. So we call it mutualism. They're both benefiting. On your notes sheet next to mutualism, I would draw two smiley faces, like two happy faces. That's going to help you remember that both species are happy. Both species benefit from mutualism. It's going to be a quick way to remember that for the quiz. Okay. The second type of symbiotic relationship that we're going to look at today is commensalism. So commensalism is a symbiotic relationship in which one species benefits without benefiting or harming the other organism. So one species is like great, like benefiting a lot, and the other one, nothing happens to it. So the benefits for the one species could be food, shelter, transportation, or defense, like protection. So let's look at this example in the picture. We have pilot fish, which are these fish right here, and a shark. The pilot fish actually swim along with the shark underneath it. As they're swimming, the shark scares away predators, so they're using the shark for defense. the pilot fish also can eat the scraps of the shark's food. So anytime the shark's eating any extra scraps, the fish can quickly grab and eat. So they're getting food and protection. However, the relationship does not affect the shark at all. The shark doesn't want to eat the fish. It's not really interested in the fish. The relationship does nothing to the shark. It doesn't harm it. It doesn't benefit it. So we call this type of relationship commensalism, because one organism is benefiting, but the other organism, nothing's really happening to it. So on your notes sheet, I want you to draw a smiley face and then a face that's just kind of blank. The other organism's not happy, it's not sad, nothing's happening to it. Okay, that's commensalism. Okay, the last relationship that we're going to look at today is parasitism. So we've actually kind of looked at this already with our unit on microorganisms, but it's also a type of symbiotic relationship. So parasitism is the symbiotic relationship between a parasite and a host. So remember, a parasite needs a host to survive. They attach themselves to the host and they use all of the host's nutrients. But remember, they don't really want to kill the host because then they would die too. They wouldn't have anything to live off of. So they kind of use up all the host's nutrients and make the host really weak, but they don't actually kill the host. Okay, so like it says here, the parasite often harms its host by taking nutrients from it, but the parasite does not kill its host. So the relationship between the parasite and the host, we call that parasitism. So let's take this example in this awful picture right here of the dog. Okay, a flea. A flea is a type of parasite. A flea attaches itself to the dog. You often hear about like flea sprays and medicines that dogs can take to make sure that they can avoid fleas from attaching themselves to the dogs. But let's say the flea does attach itself to the dog. It lives off the dog. The flea benefits for sure, and the dog is definitely harmed. So this is any type of relationship where one organism benefits and the other one is harmed. It's not necessarily killed like predator-prey, but it's harmed. Okay, like the dog is very hurt. Like usually the immune system's weak. There's a lot of issues that happen with this. You can see they had to shave the area where the flea was to try to kill off the fleas that were now on the dog's body. Okay, the dog is not killed, but the flea takes all the dog's nutrients, so the dog is unhappy. So you want to draw on your notes sheet a smiley face because one organism is really happy, and then a sad face because the other one is really unhappy. Okay, so you're going to practice with these concepts through different scenarios. So what you're going to do is read a situation that explains a relationship between two organisms, and after you read it, you're going to answer a few questions about it, deciding what type of relationship the organisms have. You're going to answer on the back of your notes sheet, and you'll turn the sheet in at the end of class for a grade. So make sure you're working really carefully and using your notes for each one. Each one should take you about 3 minutes, so make sure you're moving through the stations so that you can finish them by the end of class. Alright, so let's look at what one would look like. So the situation is up at the top, you see the little paragraph about it, and then there's going to be a picture that'll also show you the relationship between the two organisms. So here we have a spider crab and algae. So spider crabs live in shallow areas of the ocean floor, and greenish-brown algae lives on the crabs' backs, making the crabs blend in with their environment and unnoticeable to predators. The algae get a good place to live, and the crab gets camouflage. So that's the little paragraph describing the relationship, and then you have the picture showing it too. So the 3 questions are, what kind of symbiosis is taking place here? What is the definition of that type of symbiosis? And then how does the situation fit that definition? So take a few minutes right now to think of what kind of symbiosis this is and answer these questions at the top of your notes to practice. Okay, so hopefully you wrote down that this was a mutualistic or mutualism going on in this relationship. And then the definition for mutualism is a relationship in which both species benefit. And then hopefully you took examples from the passage about the two organisms to explain how this situation fits that definition. So you could say that the crabs are camouflaging in with their environment, which helps them defend themselves from predators, and the algae are finding shelter on the crabs' backs or a place to live. So they're both getting something from the relationship. So they're both benefiting. So this is what each of your stations will look like, and you'll answer on the back of your notes.